Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are joining in from. Thank you so much for logging in. Really appreciate you taking time during a long weekend, especially in India. We are celebrating festivities. In this channel, I have been interviewing various authors. We had Jai Kumar Hariharan, who wrote about Rewire, how leaders can start their journey in a restarted manner. Then we had Usha Rangarajan, who had compiled short stories which are hard hitting, insightful. And we continue to have these author sessions because I believe authors have a unique point of view to share, which is not there out in the world through their lived experience, practice. So, what benefit we would get by talking to an author? We would gain access to their clarity of their mind because they have done so much of research, and it is not easy to publish a book, and you have to go through the hawk eyes of an editor and your own family members and friends and people whom you respect in the industry. They all would read your manuscript, and finally they would say, yeah, it's ready to go out. And still, you would be very paranoid about any grammatical errors, spelling mistakes. Did I thank everyone enough? So after going through all those hardships, a book comes out. That means it's like crossed, as in India we say, Agni Pariksha of many kinds. So when a book comes to my hand, I feel two things. One, I could hear the voice of the author in my ears. I may sound very paranoid, but that's how I would like to have my relationship with the book. It's not just printed text on a page. So when I pick up a book, this is what I do. I try to listen to the voice of the author. Second, how do I translate that to give insights to my clients? So I do consulting, I do coaching, I do train coaches. So in my line of business, I would like to know how I can create that kind of insight where the author, whatever he or she is writing, is translated to many more people, and the impact gets like a ripple effect. So that's why I bring more authors to this channel. Thank you so much for joining in. In case you are new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. You will get notification as we go along, meeting new authors. Also, I try to summarize books that I read into small 10 minute, 15-minute, or even 30-minute videos, so that you benefit by understanding what the author is trying to say from my perspective. And if you like it, you can go ahead and try your hands on that book. So with that, I want to introduce our today's special guest, Neel. He's Neelacantan B. He would like to be called as Neel. He's written this wonderful book, Feedback Decoded. The cover page itself is really intriguing. There is a caricature, a person caught in between boxes of feedback, letters spread over. So let me have the privilege of introducing Neel onto this show. Hi, Neel. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Absolutely my pleasure, Bhaskar. Absolutely my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And we've had a few rounds of conversations between first time when we met, and we got introduced through a common friend, Priya. And that's how we got to know about each other. And I'm really privileged to know about your book. Since then, we have had 2 or 3 rounds of conversation on what you intend to convey through this book and how we can take it to a larger audience through this medium. So, first, may I request you to give a brief introduction of yourselves?
Okay. Yeah. So I see myself as I have about 22 years of experience in the learning and development space, totally industry, some part of it learning and development. But really the way I describe myself is I am a creator at heart. I like to create things. That's what makes me alive. So whether I'm creating a training or a learning experience, or I'm creating a game or creating a book, for me, creation is what drives me. And the book is one of the creations that I have brought out into the world, if you will.
Wonderful. And there's one more connect where we hit it off really well is I try to convert any book or chapter or article that I read into some tangible game or way that participants can interact and learn by working on that template or card game and so on. You also have a same passion, similar passion. Can you say more about that, please?
Um, okay, I think that will actually require a much longer conversation. But yes, I have actually created what is called as 108% Indian. It is in one of its kind Indian brainstorming toolkit, and that's available on. It's actually available on Amazon. It's a so that I realized that there were no Indian brainstorming tools, as funny as it sounded. So I created one. I'm also in the process of working on one more game that should be launched in another month or so. So it's something that keeps me going. I have this urge, if you will, to keep creating something, and there is always some side project or the other that I'm working on. Bhaskar.
Right. And I'm also curious about why you wanted to write another book on feedback, because there are so
Yeah.
many material available out there. And when you Google, you get millions of hits in 0.006 seconds. Why another book on feedback?
Yeah, you are so right about it, right? See, I started writing this book on feedback after I became a learning consultant. And as a learning consultant, I have done sessions for hundreds of people. And what I realized was, despite as you rightly pointed out, despite so many books and reams written on feedback, why is it such a difficult skill? So I think two things struck me, actually, two or three things struck me. One was that there is no book written on it from an Indian perspective. Second, most books leave you by giving you a framework and then leaving you there. But what happens? See, as they say in military parlance, right? The plan is the first thing that gets hit when you meet the enemy. So you go in with a conversation, the other guy tells something else. How do you handle it? And these were the questions people would ask me. So over the years, I've compiled this and kept compiling and compiling. And at one point, I realized it is worth putting it into a book. And of course, I had a couple of other insights. And like I told you, this being creative is very important for me. Being original. So hopefully, for those of you who have read the book, you'll also find a couple of original insights, and we'll talk about a couple of them today. So the combination of this, right? The Indian context. Is there some value addition that I'm going to bring to this? And thirdly, like I said, make it practical. Tell me, what am I supposed to do with it?
True, very true. And when I started reading this book, I could see a lot of dialogues happening between colleagues. And I was transported to my operations role earlier. Before starting my own professional consulting and coaching journey, I was part of a large organization handling operations. And I know how difficult it is to provide feedback without people getting offended. And when you're head of a department or an organization, it's even more difficult, because whatever you do or say or not say become a feedback. And I remember in your book you mentioned not giving feedback is also a feedback, right?
Oh, I must actually talk about this. This is one of the. No, I'm going to say this also. There is one more question where Subramanian says, waiting to hear about an Indian context. So this is a classic Indian method. I will not talk to you. I don't like the way you work, so I will stop talking to you. I will ignore you. It is our way of giving feedback, and we often do this to people who report to us. While that may be lesser, we actually do it more to peers and superiors. And it is such a common thing, right? Not giving feedback instead. So not giving feedback is one. Second, we go and give feedback to somebody else. So some of these are also our own traits, right? Because of the difficulty in having conversation, because of the difficulty in having to take the bull by its horns for a variety of reasons, we actually don't give feedback, or we think I will stop engaging with this guy. That is our method of giving feedback. We actually believe that will work.
Yeah, so we have heard this many times in the research, as well as Greet Hofstede in his book on culture. He also brings out this Western culture is more of task oriented, individualistic, whereas Indian or Eastern culture is more of relationship oriented and collective and part of a community, right? So that makes it even more difficult for someone to give feedback and continue to work with that person in a more amicable manner. And
So
typically what they do is they say good job. And I've heard you say earlier, as well as in the book, you mentioned good job is an example of a bad feedback. do you think is very pertinent to Indian context, or is this a global phenomenon? What is your experience like?
So yeah, so two things. I'll actually go back to one of the other things that you said earlier, right? See, it is not that we are incapable of having conversations. It is that we lack the skill, and this is simple. Giving feedback is actually a very simple skill. All it takes is a little bit of practice and being able to actually go and have the conversation. So there is a one, of course, is I should know what to say. The second is go actually doing it. So it's important to actually go and have the conversation. That's the second part. Now the third part, the combination of this is we find it very easy to say good job, and good job is just one example, but because see, on the scale of conversations, is a very easy thing. I told somebody good job. Now the problem with good job is it doesn't tell you what was good about it. Exactly what was good. Is it good because the client appreciated it? Is it because somebody messed up the timelines and you slogged and you got the timelines in place? Is it because the boss has a bad day or a good day? What exactly is good about it? How am I going to repeat this learning in a way that it makes me a better professional? Very often that is lost on us. So just saying good job is the easiest cop out, if you ask me.
And also, Neil, my experience says people also want to hear only that phrase, not more. Right? When somebody is soliciting feedback and they hear good job, they feel happy and move on. Very few stop back to say, what do you mean by good job? What was good about it? So, can you throw light on that?
So both aspects, right? One is, so I'll give you a couple of examples. One is, let's say I ask somebody for feedback. You'll say, good job. What is good about it? Oh, everything was good. Keep doing what you're doing. So I would have heard it so often that I don't want to go and ask you for a feedback. So that is on the giver side. Now on the receiver side, when I hear good job, I am usually thinking, okay, good. Let me just step away from here before the good job becomes something else. So I'm just going to collect what I get and go with it. Let us not explore this too much. Naito, he will say, actually, it was a good job, but last week you did something wrong, and then something else happened before that. Okay, let me just collect this and store it, and then run away from here. So it is like I said, it's a combination of skill that I need to have to give the feedback, and my own ability to say, hey, Bhaskar, can you clarify what do you mean when you say good job? I want to get really better at this. And I'll actually, the irony of this is the high performing individuals, the individuals in your team who are real high performers, who really want that feedback to say, hey, this is what you did well. Here is what I want you to do better. Also don't get it. So everybody gets a uniform good job.
And I'm also thinking, not many people ask for feedback, right? One of the question which came on the YouTube channel earlier when I posted that teaser is, who is worthy of asking for feedback? Whom should I, consider as someone who can give me a better or objective feedback where I can improve on?
Yeah, this is such a brilliant question, because a lot of times when we give feedback, now think of it as me sitting on a pedestal and the feedback receiver sitting down. I give feedback as if I am doing a favor. This is how people give feedback. In almost a lot of feedback is also given in a condescending manner. Bhaskar, you have to improve your live video skills. Well, who am I to tell you that? So I give you feedback. I am not an expert in your field, and I'm still giving you this feedback because I'm positionally higher than you, just because I have a higher designation. See, a feedback is a conversation. At that point, when you're having the feedback, it is a conversation between equals. It cannot, the moment, if people, so the answer to that is, if you're going to get condescending feedback, don't ask. Go and ask for feedback for people who you think will give you a rational view of it. The people who will appreciate you for what you do well, and the people who will say, hey, here are some things that you could do, who you could really work on. Here is what I observe, who are willing to have that transparent conversation with you.
I like the way you mentioned feedback is a conversation between people who are equal. This is beautiful. And why would you call feedback as a conversation? Because it's supposed to be flowing from person who is, giving to the person who is receiving, right? Is it a conversation really?
Oh, feedback is always a conversation. So let's assume for a moment you gave me feedback on, this is one of the things I have. It's my personal feedback. I have to get better at it. I am not very good at speaking in formal ways. I'm very good at speaking informally, but formal conversation often gets me tongue-tied. Now, assume somebody gives me this feedback and say, hey, Neel, you need to get better at having formal conversations. And my immediate question would be, can you elaborate on that? So now at that point, I expect you to give me not templated feedback, not anodyne stereotyped sentences, but actually you have listened to me enough to give me feedback that I can work on. That is why it is always a conversation. I will ask you a clarifying question, which, by the way, we often miss. The clarifying question is the one thing, and maybe if we have time, we should talk about it. Our We have an emotional reaction the moment somebody gives us feedback. But ask a clarifying question. The moment you ask a clarifying question, it becomes a conversation. So every feedback is actually a conversation. It is not just give and take and receive and then go. No, it is actually a conversation.
So that reminds me, there is education institution in UK where Professor Gibbs is the one who brought out the nuance of feedback to a student in the education system, and he revolutionized the entire education system in UK. And he mentions this in one of his paper. He says feedback is an opportunity to share my standards so that you can self correct when needed.
I have a like. I think fundamentally there is right, but there is a bit. I would like to differ a little bit on this, and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
Today, when we work with people, right, we work with people who are experts in different fields, right? So now, just take you and me for example. Technically, I am the author who's written a book, and technically, you are right now. You are a leader who's hosting a video podcast. My standards of a video podcast is not what you should adhere to. Are you getting it? And in this case, since you are an more of an expert, and I'm saying I might be the professor and you might be the student, I'm just hypothetically extending that example. Your standards might be higher than me. So I'm not so sure it is so much about the standards, but it's about you showing me that, hey, you have room to improve, you can get really good at this. If you can show me my strength and give me feedback and say, hey, you are doing three things well, but you take care of this one additional thing, those three things will become so much better. That feedback is my opportunity to improve, and I am sharing the feedback not because I am the leader who's able to tell you this thing that you should work on, but I'm the leader who feels, you know what, you do this well, you'll go places. This is coming in the way. It is being able to show you that blind spot and make it realize for yourself. See, my job is not to say, Bhaskar, you have a blind spot. No, I work with you and you realize it.
True. And I think we are still in the first stage of why feedback and what is the importance of feedback. Earlier, you had shared about feedback as breakfast of champions, and you had a thought on that. Would you like to elaborate, please?
Yeah. See, exactly the thing. It is also connected to the question of whom should you seek feedback, right? It's also about saying where should I have breakfast from? Yeah, if the feedback is consumable, you should definitely take that feedback. If the feedback is not consumable, don't take it. Not all feedback is equally good.
Absolutely. And also, you may be feeling like you want more to be nourished, and specific feedback to be more nourished in the area that you want to grow. And if the breakfast is not sumptuous, or it's not holistic in nutrition, you feel like you've not got enough.
That's a good example, right? Good job is like a lot of sweet you had in the breakfast because it was nice, but then you figure out, okay, exactly what good did that do to me?
True. So now that we have established feedback is important, feedback is also something that we need to be aware of, how much to take, from whom we should take, whether we should work on it, or we could take it as input and then move on. So the critical part in this entire thing is the emotion part, right? It's not what is said, it is how it is being delivered, is the tone of the voice, body language, eye contact. And this corona pandemic situation, it has made even more difficult to connect with your well wishers and mentors, a board of personal board of directors who have your interest at their heart, because they are not there when you are performing, right? These are small closed events where only few get to see you perform at work. So in that sense, how do you think we can continue to get feedback, and how do we nourish ourselves and enrich our performance as we go forward?
So let me start with the first point that you mentioned, right? this is the, I was I've written this in the book also, where in the Godfather, Mario, in the book, the author says everything is personal. There is no such thing as business. There is, everything is personal. So even feedback, as much as you attempt to be professional, there is an emotional angle. I am not going to like it if you're going to tell me something I don't want to hear, I don't like to hear. So the trick there is in the framing. If you frame it well, it's not that emotions will not be there. Of course, emotions will be there, but the framing ensures that you handle, and that's where your the model that we spoke about in the morning, situation, behavior, impact, makes it so easily. Look, the feedback is about this situation, this behavior, and this impact. I'm not talking about Neel as a person. I'm not talking of X as a person. I'm not talking about your character, your history, your life. No, I am talking of a very specific instance. I think in another book, somebody else has written this very well. Especially when we scold children, right? We say, you're a bad boy. No, you are a good boy. You who just happened to do a bad thing. They are very different things. But the moment you give feedback to somebody, what am I hearing? I'm hearing you are a bad boy. Like, I'm not a bad boy. You have no right to tell me that. But that's not what I need to tell you. I need to tell you, look, you're a good boy, but here is this situation where you push the neighbor on the bicycle with the neighbor on it. This situation was bad behavior. See, it's not, but a lot of times we don't get it. The feedback giver and the receiver don't get it. If I frame it badly, you're going to take it as, who is he to tell me I'm bad at this, right?
So you also mentioned briefly about Carol Dweck and her book on mindset, where a growth mindset versus fixed mindset. A fixed mindset person, or when a person in that mindset might inadvertently say bad boy, but a person with a good mindset at that moment might say your behavior is not acceptable.
You framed it so brilliantly. Now think about it, right? I have a growth mindset, but the person who's giving me feedback is giving me a fixed mindset feedback, saying you didn't meet the goals. What about my effort? Whereas growth mindset is all about looking at the effort rather than just meeting the goal. Right now, I really like the way you frame it. Even the feedback giver has to actually frame the feedback in a growth mindset manner. So you can't expect. It's like saying, okay, be ready for cricket, but I'll throw a football at you. Right? So I'm here waiting to be a growth mindset guy, and give me fixed mindset feedback. How does that work for me? It won't.
Absolutely. And in my professional training, I got a slight variation on 1 second. Let me type this.
Sure.
I got a slight variation to this model, which I adapted to suit my needs, with the added request at the end, SBIR. So the situation is, Neel, while presenting yesterday to a set of clients who are very important to us, marquee clients, platinum category clients, you appeared not to be prepared for all the questions. And the reading material was supplied to you earlier. You did not read it well. And the impact is, customer might think that we are not serious about them. The request I have for you is, could you please come prepared the next time? Yeah. Or if it's appreciation, the same model can be used as Neel. Yeah. In yesterday's demo to our new client, you came prepared. You had a list of frequently asked questions in that situation, and you printed it out, and you had those printouts ready to be distributed. And it had a great impact that, yes, we think through all possible aspects in a systemic way, and we are likely to get that contract. So please continue to do this more often.
So very well framed, Bhaskar. And imagine, most of the times at the end of it, I'll likely get good job. Right? So
yeah, is it more Indian or is it more global?
Look, it's possibly both, but in some cultures they are far more comfortable giving direct feedback. I think that's the first part of it, whether it is positive or negative. But overall, what I feel is, in Indian culture, appreciation, see, we find it difficult to appreciate ourselves in the first place, leave alone appreciating others. And I've done so many sessions with so many people. There are times when people say, "Arey, if I appreciate this guy today, tomorrow he'll come asking for a promotion and a salary hike. So I would rather not appreciate."
On my head.
Yeah. So we also tend to take appreciation as, "Acha, appreciate kar diya, now I should get a 20% hike." Well, I'm appreciating you for this piece of work you've done. It doesn't mean you'll get a 20% hike because I appreciated you. So managers actually hold back from appreciating. And the example that you just gave, I want to just touch upon that. This SBIR, one of the best ways to practice feedback models is actually in giving appreciative feedback. And we often wait, no, let me wait for that golden opportunity to practice this critical feedback. No, practice SBI when appreciating people. I mean, practice it at home, practice it with people you know. It also, it takes away the danger of somebody feeling, oh, looks like I'm appreciated, I can go ask for a 20% hike. Because you appreciated clearly, situation behavior impact. It's a very clear appreciation. So I like the way you framed it, because that's one of the things I talk about in the book, where I say, learn to use these models during appreciation. Then it is easier for you to use it in any other situation.
Yeah. So even in the book, you mentioned about appreciating as a tool. The more you appreciate, I still remember the caricature where there is a balance. On one end, a person is standing with lots of appreciation, and the other end, the person who is receiving, is able to get the uh, area of improvement or criticism equally well when appreciation is much more on the weighing balance.
So it's like this, right? When you appreciate me, and this is true for all relationships, by the way, not just a manager subordinate relationship. You can use this in any relationship. The moment I feel appreciated, and I am appreciated verbally, non-verbally, whatever that is, I know you have my best interest at heart. You are seeing what I do well. Now, when I see you appreciate me for what I'm doing well, I'm willing to take the feedback for what I'm not doing well. But in a lot of relationships, all you hear is, okay, so what if you slog for 300 hours? There was that one SLA that you missed. What about all the work that I did? So that's the whole key, right? The balance comes from appreciating when it is required and pointing out flaws when you see them. But very often we are so caught up in pointing out the flaw that the entire edifice of appreciation is forgotten.
True. And the caricatures you have throughout the book is more fitting, and it is more sticky. It goes with the narrative, it goes with the text. You did a fantastic job. I'm sure more thought has gone into each of these caricatures, right?
Oh yeah. So the credit for the illustration, of course, is by Harsh Pandya, who's been a constant, who's worked with me in multiple projects. So I would give him a brief, and I said, work with this. So he asked me a question: can it be caricatures? And does it have to be formal? I said, no. Let's give it a whack. Let's just break the mold and make it have caricatures in a formal book. And if you see the images, you would have seen some of the images with dragons and
I
warriors.
know.
So we actually we said let's make the images also different, so that as you read the book, there is a scroll and then suddenly an image strikes you. So we actually it's done on purpose to have a slight to break your mindset, so to
Yeah,
say.
of course. And a big shout out to Mr. Pandya for bringing all those nuances. And one particular caricature which caught my attention is reinterpretation, I should say, of Johari Window. Right. I'll just briefly display it here with your permission.
Yeah, sure.
Take us through that. How did you come up with this brilliant idea?
Because if you look at the internet, all the Johari window illustrations are one of these typical 2x2 matrices. And I think a lot of times when people see a 2x2 matrix in a book, often they fall asleep. So while working with Harsh, and he calls himself his line of work is called the McMutton Project. So we all call him Mutton. So while working with Mutton, I said, you know what? Can you reinterpret this here? Make a fun Johari window, known to self, known to others, and he's not a Superman, as you can see. There's a superhero there. You want to be known to others as a superhero. Then there are these blind spots which I do not know about me. Then there are corners about me which I don't want to reveal to anybody. Then there are corners which I know to me and not to be revealed to others. So we have used, so it was of course a discussion between the two of us. And then he actually said, can I put a window around it? And that is why you see this ornate, decorated window. And that is why it is, I said, it looks good. So that is why the Johari window is a literal window with actual expressions in there. But thank you for picking that one up, because it's one of the illustrations that we spent some time discussing and getting it right.
I like the scorpions and the elephant catching. What is that called? I don't know.
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen
a
it
trap. It's one of those. It's called a crocodile.
Trap.
Some crocodile trap. It is called. It looks like a crocodile.
Yeah. So and also this torch that this guy is carrying, not known to others. Window.
Yeah.
There's a spider, coming from the roof. It's amazing. This gives me a perspective on how important feedback is. and whom should we ask for feedback, and how we can explore different corners of our own
Yeah.
house, as they say. And the other caricature, as you rightly said, is about the dragon, right? I don't know, is it the Chinese connection or any other
Oh, no, no.
reason for
That's
bringing out the dragon?
Oh, that's because Mr. Mutton loves to draw dragons, and he said, "Can I depict a dragon?" I said, "Go ahead, depict a dragon. It depicts fear. See, it's also symbolic, right? You're going in to give feedback, or you're going in to have a conversation. And in my mind, even though I'm the manager, even though I am a leader or a peer, whoever it is, I'm also afraid because that conversation is an unknown entity. It is like a dragon. I have no idea what the dragon will do to me. So symbolically, also it fits in the context. Think of a conversation you want to have and you're afraid of it. Think of it, right? It's symbolically, it's like a dragon. It's like I have no idea what this thing is going to do. I have to tame this dragon.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned about manager team member relationship, even at home, between spouse, between parent and child, and also in neighborhood, where we have important responsibilities, like being part of a community welfare society, or some kind of social obligation. Everywhere feedback is very critical, right?
Oh, thank you for
Even
sharing
while
that.
you're playing with random strangers, week on week, the relationship grows into more than acquaintance, and they also want to give feedback about your game. Otherwise you will stay as amateur and would never graduate to a expert level, or even at least a professional level in due course of time, and you
No,
lose your motivation eventually.
yeah, I would like to add this one piece here where you mentioned this thing on having to give feedback. Right? See what has happened today with so many means of communication. It is easier for everybody to write random things on WhatsApp, especially you see this in groups, right? Very often, the simpler thing is pick up the phone and talk. It's easy. It'll actually resolve issues. Don't get into exchanging. It's the same with exchanging long emails. You would have seen this at work, right? Some
Yeah.
years ago, it was practically an epidemic. Write a long mail with inline responses. You refuting my point, I refuting your point. You can see pretty much the same thing happening on WhatsApp. Pick up the phone and have a
Bold
conversation.
font, caps lock
Yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah.
red
All of it.
color
Right? Yeah,
font.
yeah, with arrows. Yeah, exactly. Pick up the phone and have a conversation. And the more you get better at this skill is absolutely it's worth its weight in gold, Bhaskar. You learn how to have a conversation and you don't worry about the difficulty. You say, I'm going to have that conversation no matter what.
Absolutely. And especially in corporate life, when we talk about manager giving feedback, it stays at a chit chat level. And they think the conversation they're having on a daily basis is the feedback that they're giving. And year end feedback. And towards the end of your book, you also mentioned many of them write one single word saying agree. If there is a skip level manager who is approving performance management on the system, they just say agree to first level manager. They don't add anything. And I don't know how the system works, and will HR compile all this feedback and give it to the individual, or it will be made visible to the individual at the end of the year, or is it done once a year and not ever again? All these are the dark areas. I think when we relook at this during the new normal, we should have the courage to redraft the entire feedback framework. And people who are having this HRMS and PMS systems design responsibility should do a good job of maybe adding a video recording or audio recording, or nudging them to call, as you rightly said. Pick up the phone and talk, man. Come on.
Oh, people
How
will
hard
run
it is
away.
going to be.
People will run away. See, that's what, because people don't have the skill, right? It's a skill that you have to develop. And the point that you mentioned about conversations, Bhaskar, right? We think that just because I have a random chit chat, it is good enough. No, it is not.
Yep.
These conversations are exponentially difficult, as you will see in that image which I had shared with you, right? It's there in the book as well, where we say,
Is
so
it a
we
good time
assume,
to share that now?
yeah, you should probably share that now.
Yes,
So
there it is.
here is what happens, right? Easy chit chat is easy. It's easy. Transactional, we stay over there. You realize that as you move from left to right or right to left, depending on how you see it on your screen, you realize that the real issues are very, very difficult to tackle. So you have to step into those difficult conversations. Without doing that, trust is not going to get built. And if you see here, he has actually depicted the person going under a waterfall. So it may not even be visible. You have to actually
Yeah.
cross that barrier and get into those difficult conversations, because sometimes it's just easy to paper over these difficult. Let's not talk about it. Yeah, let us not talk about. Let's assume that all things are well. No, it's not helping you in any manner. It's in fact making a relationship worse, if you will.
True. And at the end of it, you have an apple.
Yeah, yeah, the apple, I would call it the apple of trust. All that is his mutton's contribution. The Easter eggs, as you would see, right? You will find us in a lot of illustrations where there is some new thing that would be there when you look. Oh, there is an apple there. Absolutely, very well observed, Bhaskar.
So I think you have nailed it really well, Neel, and it also shows the number of workshops that you have conducted. You have heard people talk about their emotions when it comes to feedback. You have heard them, feel confused and get clarity. They also have might have shared feedback of using these tools and techniques to betterment of or advancement of their career. So you have mentioned many tools in the book. One of them, which I don't like, is the sandwich feedback, and which is more often used even in B schools. They teach, it seems. My heart breaks when I hear that. And in your book, the caricature talks about throwing away both the bread slices and taking only the masala, right? The new masala sandwich. Can you say more about that, please?
Yeah. So I think this is one of the misconceptions that's been running around. And nowadays, luckily, it's gotten much better. But even today, in a lot of my sessions, even in a lot of conversations, people turn around and say, "Oh, you mean sandwich feedback?" It is the worst type of feedback you can give. Now, think of it, right? So why is it called sandwich? Because you're supposed to say good, bad, good. That is why it is called sandwich. Now, think of it. You're going to have a conversation with your child on something that the child needs to improve. You said something good, then you say something bad, then you say something good. But in your mind also, that bad is what you want to convey. So likely those two good is going to be some absolutely useless pieces of bread, because you want to just make the person feel good. And extend this to any situation, it's exactly the same thing. And now think of a relationship where you can get to the masala right away, right? Why do you need this extra bread? There is no need. Imagine a conversation where I can transparently talk to you and tell you, hey, you know what, I want to talk to you about X, and the X is something that I'm finding uncomfortable with, I would like to get better. It's imagine having that level of trust in relationship, instead of having to find out one good thing, then having to have the bad thing, then have to find one more good thing. It's a contrived conversation. It is not even real.
Yeah, and many Mumbaikars would relate to what I'm going to say now. It's like vada pav without vada.
Yeah, actually, correct. And when the whole point is to have the vada, right?
Yeah, true. And there is a question from one of the Mumbaikars here. Let me display it. Hi, KVS. He's
I think
asking
this is
how
a I
effective is continue. Yeah.
I actually saw this question, and I think it's so right about it, right? See, now if you look at the crux of this, the conversation image that we just shared now, that is continuous conversations, which means in every conversation, instead of saying hi, hello, I am actually talking about work. I'm talking about the things that matter. So what companies don't realize, or are begun to realize, or many have realized, is that if you move away from this formal reviews into continuous feedback, I, as a manager, should have absolutely fantastic conversations with you. I should have the trust. I should build the trust. We should have conversation, not just general chit chat and how's the weather and what did you do last weekend and how was the match kind of thing, to actual conversations. Hey, I'm finding it difficult to work. Hey, I'm finding it difficult to get this team to cooperate. Really having those conversations is what is going to make it effective. Now, everybody celebrates, oh, we have done away with the rating system. We are done away with the twice in a year formal reviews. But what have you got in return? Because if you don't give me this continuous conversation,
Yeah,
I'm
true.
going to go back and say, okay, 1 year has happened. What have I got promoted? Have I got an X% hike? Well, if not, then it is useless. Right? So KV's question is absolutely spot on. It is that if you want to move into a rating-less, high feedback mechanism of performance, you have to get into having regular conversations, and
True.
not just easy chit chat, but actual proper conversations about things that matter.
True.
And that's the
And
counter thing. Just one thing, Bhaskar. See,
yeah,
if you ask,
correct.
ask anybody, what is the first thing that gets cancelled in any work situation is employee manager one-on-one.
Mm.
It is the first thing that gets carried. Chodo yaar, we'll meet next week. I am happy, you are happy. Chodo yaar, what is the point of talking to this guy? So think of the opposite of it. No, if you can actually have those one-on-one conversations, you established everything. So my performance appraisal is not a surprise. Pretty much we have discussed everything. I know, I know what you're going to say.
Mm.
You know what I'm going to say.
I think KBS is also alluding to this Indian versus outside India kind of comparison. I have worked in American company once, or at least I can say I worked in a global organization under an American CHRO or CLO, where the culture is, as you rightly said, there will be a weekly one-on-one on the calendar, and I cannot skip it. I can only reschedule it if there is any emergency.
Yeah,
Otherwise, those sessions are really, really important. And there is a place where all these feedback given by my manager is recorded on a portal. So even when my manager gets moved out to a different project, or I get assigned to a different project, feedback moves with me, right? I can definitely take the name of my manager. She's no more. We lost her to cancer. Nishi Levitt, amazing manager. She would prepare on a piece of paper with her handwritten notes. Exactly, Bhaskar, in this leadership development workshop, in this executive presence workshop, where 18 participants were there, you were standing in this corner. There was a participant with blue shirt, and he asked this question. You did not answer. To that level, she will give detailed feedback after every session, and those notes I cherish a lot. Because of those sessions, I'm a better person right now, right?
yeah,
Had I not got a manager like her, or many more managers in my career have been like that, who had given me specific feedback after a performance in a continuous basis, I think I would not be where I am right now, maybe a different place. But those investments are paying off, and I have decided to pay it back by providing the same environment to my team. Psychological safety is what I'm alluding to here. When a manager is giving feedback, you're assured that it is not going to be always negative. It
correct,
could also be appreciation. It
correct.
could also be areas of improvement which would shift your career to a different orbit altogether. So this Indian versus non-Indian context, could you share more? I'm sure KBS would be
Yeah,
very
see,
happy.
so I have worked with quite a huge number of companies, right? And what I see here is it is the process. It is not so much about whether you're Indian or not Indian, but there is a process in the company, and that process is being followed. And again, I'm not saying it is Indian or non-Indian. The key is, are you able to follow the process? Now, in general, we are not as process oriented as, say, European or American companies for that matter. So that part of it is true. But if you got the process right, there are companies in India and teams in India that have got it right. It is all about ensuring the process, as you rightly said, that one-on-one will not be missed unless there is an emergency. We will not miss the one-on-one. We will always have a conversation. Very few companies record the one-on-one, but just ensuring that this happens. So how does it happen? If I report to you, you have the one-on-one. You will do it for me. You will do it for me. Your boss does it for you. I will do it for my reportee. It is almost 100% of it is role modeling it. But our role modeling is what? Your boss doesn't do it, I will not do it. So it's an easy one to skip, right?
True, true. And in your book, also, you mention about bringing that conversation in a more question format rather than only telling. Ask versus tell. There's a
Yeah,
beautiful caricature which drives home the point of how do I shift from being a person who is only telling feedback rather than use a Socratic method of asking questions to derive what prompted this person to behave this way in that situation. Perhaps there is a set of data points which you may be missing or you don't know before giving away your criticism, or things which would really hurt the relationship. You could have this questioning approach. Can you say more about that? I think as a coach I resonate very well with that, and I've been advocating this shift in the way people give their feedback.
yeah. So a couple of things. I see a bunch of questions, and maybe we should go to that. But I will answer this piece. See, this model is a framework that is taken from David Rock's book, Quiet Leadership. And you're absolutely right. It is more used in a coaching context. But what I have seen is it can actually be used very effectively in a feedback context. Uh, what it does is it taps into the power of the individual. Hey, Bhaskar, how do you think yesterday's presentation went? Look, 99%, unless you are that 1% irrational person, you will know how the presentation went. I really don't have to tell you. Now, if you already know how the presentation went, I just need to affirm or change or just redirect you. That's pretty much what I need to do. So the entire how do I say, the pressure of giving you the exact feedback is not mine. My job is to awaken you to say, hey, how do you think that went? Okay, here is what went well, here is what could have been better. Now I can say, so what do you think what do you think you can do? I can ask, or I can tell, hey, maybe this is what we could do. Let's do a review next time before you make the presentation. So and that also makes it a conversation, alluding to your earlier question. So it is all about being able to have a conversation.
So you used the word pressure. I would use a similar one, like burden or responsibility is not on me. It's a shared responsibility, right? Because the intent is to take our performance to the next level. Make our company look good, make our team become high performing team. So when I talk about psychological safety, I refer to Amy Odmanson's work on this. She clearly points out that feedback rich culture is not the one which will always be in any conflict all the time, or it'll be mollycoddling and giving only positive feedback. It's not like that. Even hard hitting feedback is given and received in a even more hard hitting way. And the best way to show that I have absorbed that feedback is to perform better the next time. Right?
Oh, there is this very, very well known, very good friend of mine who's a leader. He says, he calls it tough love. He says, doesn't mean I'm going to tell you only nice things. I will tell you hard things. I'll tell you things you don't like to hear. We even do this with our kids, right? I think there is this, in order to be kind, you have to be cruel. Again, I'm not saying take it literally, but it is important to bring hard facts out there. So I keep telling this. I might be telling you things you might not want to hear, but look, I see this happening far too often for me to ignore it. So it is important to have those conversations and not ignore them. And that is a process of building trust. And having those conversations builds trust. It actually doesn't take it away from there, because I also see what you're doing well. I keep appreciating you. Therefore, I'm able to have this conversation.
I've earned the right to give you feedback.
Yes. And you have to earn it. It is a tough task. Why should I trust you, right? You are my manager. You joined yesterday. Why should I trust you?
Yep.
So it is, the onus is on the manager to build that trust.
True. And there is a question from Raghunandan. How do you provide feedback where language is a barrier and culture impact would be different?
Yeah, so the simple thing is, even if language is a barrier, ultimately most of us work in English. So the key is to really prepare. And this is something you really have to, if I'm going to have a conversation with Bhaskar, write it down. Write it so that you pretty much have to only read and give the feedback. So if language is a barrier, obviously you'll have to make it far more simpler so the other person understands, and ask, but you have to write it down. The answer to that is a lot of preparation.
Even writing down, Neel, gives me an opportunity to cover all my bases. Am I being prejudiced? Am I coming from a place of judgment? Am I being cynical? All these questions, there's an opportunity for me to ask myself after writing it down. Then I can rewrite or erase or change or reframe the way I'm going to share my feedback or ask a question.
Correct.
The next is from Sheila Vishwanath. Is seeking too much feedback equivalent to seeking external validation? And will it stifle the ability of the individual to introspect and self-evaluate?
Yeah, so this is a good point. And again, this often happens, right? So there are people who will seek feedback just to show you that they're seeking feedback. That is one. There's another set of people who will keep on seeking feedback, seeking validation. So it's your job as a manager to distinguish between these two. And the method is actually ask. So Bhaskar, I thought I gave you feedback last week. What new would you like to hear? What has changed that I should give you the feedback? So the moment you see this as validation, how important is this feedback for you, considering we spoke last time? It is important to be able to parse it out. My ability to ask those questions to you, because see, as a manager, I'm also happy. Hey, this guy is asking feedback. So I'll give feedback. It's like having an empty shop, right? Somebody's walking in, let me give him feedback. So it's our job to resist that temptation as well and still stick to the point. Right now there is not much to give feedback. Why don't you work on this specific thing and then I'll give you feedback on that. So it's our job to parse that out and see what is happening when somebody is coming to you too often for feedback.
Yeah, on a lighter note, my friend circle, we call someone who loves his own voice as Mike Mohan. If a leader is a Mike Mohan, they
Yeah.
love their voice and they keep giving feedback. As whoever wants to, hang around and seek validation, or
And
at
by the way,
least. Mm,
and if I'm smart and if my manager is Mike Mohan, it is easier for me to go to the manager, keep seeking feedback, because look, the feedback is only for himself, and I will
yeah,
get a good rating. I will manipulate this, no?
yeah, true, true. And the other point for Sheila's question, which I think is, earlier we alluded to Johari window. When I don't know my blind spots, how will I introspect? How can I self evaluate? So, feedback is one way of throwing light in the darkest corner areas where, oh, I never thought of it this way, right?
Yeah,
My
yeah,
intention was not
absolutely.
like this. If
Yeah.
someone else who can see it from outside in perspective and gives me that feedback, it's easier for me to self correct. For
Look,
example, earlier in my talk, I used to have a lot of fillers, until a manager of mine recorded and showed me how I'm using all the time. Every minute there are two in my sentence. It was hard hitting. Only then I changed. I became more conscious.
yeah,
So self evaluation, introspection can take us only that far.
correct.
Feedback from a well wisher, from those who intend my interest in their heart, I'm sure we can go further, and orbit shifting performance would happen.
Yeah.
So all of these are in terms of feedback, and you also given different techniques. We spoke about the tools, we spoke about the mindset of a person who is giving feedback. Can we also talk about the important section in your book, mindset of a person who is receiving feedback?
So,
How do I prepare one to receive feedback?
okay, see, when you're going to receive feedback for the first time from anybody, it is going to be difficult, right? So there is, like I said, there is going to be an emotional reaction, especially if you hear something that you don't like. So for what it is worth, even like I think I told you this before also. Even after I release my book, I was waiting for the feedback. What if people don't like it? So it is always difficult, because there is something that you're done and put out there, and you're waiting to receive feedback. So that's the first part of it. So knowing that there will be an emotional reaction. Second is to, if you hear something you don't like, triangulate it. Try it. Ask a couple more people, and before jumping to conclusion that you are the world's greatest thing or the world's worst thing, triangulate it and figure out what is the rational, what is the right, what's that right feedback that you want to take and work on, right? So, and thirdly, of course, it is our job as a manager. So if you're the leader, it's your job as a leader to prepare the other guy. Hey, I will be giving you feedback, so prepare, set the expectation. We will have these feedback conversations, because most of the time people don't even expect it.
True. And we are coming towards the end of the conversation. This is where we talk about how do I create this as a culture, right? And in your book, you specifically mention about step in, right, as a tool to conversation. What do you mean by step into conversations?
Yeah, step in is basically, so think of it. I have a difficult conversation coming up. What is my and I want your answer on it. What is my immediate response? What is my first response? I'm asking you.
Could you repeat that, please?
So I said, let's say there is a difficult conversation coming up. What is our first response, or what would be your first response?
My guards will be up. I will expect the worst.
Oh, you're thinking that way. I'm thinking one step before that also. Our first response is to avoid it. And this is also, it's also a fairly Indian
Ah.
trait. As much
Mm.
as I can, let me avoid. Let me not see this guy. Let me
Mm.
miss. I will figure out all sorts of reasons to avoid the conversation.
Yeah.
The second one is actually having your guard up. But that is a later thing, right? Flight. As KVS pointed out, it is flight. You want to run away from the conversation. The most difficult, let's avoid it. It is counterintuitive, therefore, as a leader, to step in. If there is a difficult conversation, step in consciously, be prepared, keep your guard up, do what you want, but step in and have that conversation. That is what I mean. If there is one thing a leader can do to get better, it is to step in. There is a difficult conversation, don't step out, step in and go in, ask, have a conversation, use the ask, tell, problem solution framework, talk about it. That is what I mean when I say step in. And the more you do this, the better you get at it, the better your team also gets.
Mm. Right. And it's not sidestep, it's not step out, it is step
Yeah,
in that sense.
get in and have the conversation. Okay, there is a, so for example, if I had to talk to, say, hey Bhaskar, there is something that I would like to talk to you about what happened 2 days back. I know it may be difficult for you, but I think it's important for us to talk it out. Imagine being able to say this, but we will not. Arey, chhod yaar, let me wait for some time. Let either I will forget or Bhaskar will forget. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe he is wrong. Maybe we anyway it is all. So all sorts of these excuses come for us to stay out of it. And the counterintuitive is, okay, is this important? I have to have the conversation. So go in
Mm,
and have that conversation.
true. And also, Neil, what comes to my mind is the definition of leadership. Long ago, I learned it as it's not a popularity contest,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So
What it is not also important. So
yeah,
when I
very,
believe that leadership is contest where I come up on the popularity charts, then step in would become very difficult.
yeah. No, I mean, you've used a very strong term, popularity, but I think this is where this thing of relationship comes in, right? And possibly it's an Indian trait, possibly it's the way we have always seen managers. We want to be nice to people.
Hmm.
And the thing is, by sharing feedback like this, it doesn't take away anything from your niceness. You'll actually become nicer because you're sharing the right feedback. So this is nice. The definition itself is wrong in our head.
Hmm.
Just being nice, being telling you only nice things, well, then you're going to have very, very ineffective leaders everywhere. And look at all leaders. See, that's what, because we have this thing in our head. No, that person will feel bad. Well, it is your job to ensure that the person doesn't feel so bad. So learn the techniques, get the data, and have the conversation.
True. And one last thing before we sign off, we spoke a lot about organizational setting. We also touched a few aspects on personal setting, social setting, and even in customer, uh, service provider relationship. Feedback plays a huge role. And I have been in tough assignments way back in 2010-11 in Philippines, where my client was very tough taskmaster, and that made me a better consultant by providing the value that they are seeking and incorporating the feedback without taking it as a way of scope creep, because people around me were trying to educate me saying, hey, if you given so much to a customer, it is scope creep and it is not billed, so don't provide more value than what we are getting billed for. However, my intuition said the customer really means well, and I need to provide that value. So I took all the feedback, incorporated. It turned out like it was not a 12-hour a day. It became 18 hours a day at many occasions. But still, the stretch was worthy. I could pick up many new skills which I was not, having at that time.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right, right. So when you have a manager or leader who pushes you and is able to, so and is able to show you blind spots, is able to make you work through them, yeah, it definitely makes you a better person, and you know how to do this for the rest for your teams as well. That's your way of paying it forward as well, right?
True, true. Thank you, Neil. Thank you so much. Thank you, audience, for staying with us till now. It's been top of the hour, and wonderful conversation, Neil. Really enjoyed preparing for this session, and also working with you, intermittently to plan how we are going to take this message to the world. And if we have to reach you, if any of the audience have to reach you, what is the best way to reach you?
LinkedIn is the easiest way, if you ask me. LinkedIn, drop a message on the LinkedIn messages is the easiest way to reach me. From there, we can get to the mailbox or whatever. And again, before we finish, I must add that I am impressed with your level of preparation, your ability to get things right, to say, to spending time on making this right. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you, Neil. I don't know whether it is internet at my end. When you're appreciating, the internet went off. Anyway, jokes apart.
See, even internet is not used to hearing appreciation. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Rakesh is in Europe. Thank you, Rakesh, for making time and joining.
Thank you, Rakesh.
Good. So this is wonderful. I think we should meet up again sometime later when you reach the
Sure.
top blockbuster list in Amazon or wherever you are hosting your book. Uh, It's really wonderful, and I wish you all the best as an author, Neel. And your book should do well, because a lot of myth busters are there in this book, and it will make us a better manager, better feedback giver, and a better human being. Thank you so much. Wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you so much. Bye.